Welcome to the very first episode of the Self Designed Path. I'm Jim, and I'm just a guy fascinated by psychology, neuroscience, and how they can help us find clarity and create work that feels meaningful. So, I'm not the guru, I'm not here as a guru or a neuroscientist, and this podcast is my experiment. So, for the next 100 episodes, I want to share stories from my own journey and connect them with one simple neuroscience or mental clarity tool and leave you with a practical takeaway you can try right away. And I don't know exactly where this podcast will go, but that's the whole point. Clarity comes from walking the path and not from waiting at the starting line. So, right now, what I'm feeling as I'm recording this first episode, of course, I'm anxious and a bit nervous about it. I mean, I outlined my talking points for this episode, and I've been meaning to start this for the longest time, and I guess this is the time that I started to do it. And these past few months, I've been hiking and running a lot, and being in nature, being in silence, gave me a space to reflect. And in those quiet moments, I realized something. Whenever I talk openly with people I trust, and when I'm vulnerable or when I share struggles, I feel alive. So I remember a recent conversation with a friend about healing and childhood trauma. So we were just unpacking how those old wounds show up in our adult lives. And I had this eureka moment that my curiosity, which is so central to who I am, was often demonized when I was young. So caretakers called it annoying or disrespectful, especially if you grew up in an Asian society. So your parents, your uncles, your aunts will tell you that it's disrespectful to talk back. And honestly, that conversation with my friend lit me up. And these conversations, these moments of connection or discovery, they make me feel grounded and human. So after having that talk, that's when I knew that I didn't just want to have these conversation with friends. I also wanted to create a space where I could unpack life, analyze it, and make sense of it, even out loud, imperfectly, or even just for myself. So that is why I think my mindset towards this podcast is it's an experiment for me. So right now, when you start something new, there's always going to be doubts and fears. And for this thing, I didn't start right away. So I wrestled with the fear of being judged, primarily, the fear of failing again, because I had already tried starting two YouTube channels, one about productivity tools like Notion or Rome Research, and another about my Ironman training journey. And I realized that the Ironman is, oof, I'm not yet prepared, like mentally and physically. So both times I shut them down because if I'm honest, I wasn't creating from curiosity. I was creating to be seen, to look intelligent, to look ambitious. And keeping up with that idea, it really drained me and it didn't feel right. This time, I knew I had to approach it differently. So, not as a performance, but as an experiment. And still, imposter syndrome whispered, like, who are you to talk about neuroscience? You're not even a scientist. And of course, like, there's another voice that whispered that told me that, oh, you should monetize this right away. And I realized chasing an audience or money too early was exactly what killed my past attempts, why they were failures. This time, I would say that I had to let curiosity lead. And fear, they show up in our body like in many different ways. For me, they're racing thoughts, tight chest, and I can't stop fidgeting. So, how about you? Have you ever killed a project because you were chasing validation instead of following what felt meaningful? So, I'm hoping that this time around is gonna be different because I'm starting with curiosity, and I felt like this angle or perspective is much more meaningful for me. And I also realized that after my two attempts of starting content creation that fear is actually part of the process. And if you feel it, it doesn't mean you stop. It means you're onto something that matters. So content creation is something that I wanted to do for the longest time, but it's something that I'm really afraid of. So right now I'm feeling my fear so much, but I know that there's something here that my growth is where fear lies. So that is one of the things that I realized after journaling about this whole process of starting my first episode. So now, what helped me finally press record? I think it was that I read recently that our most meaningful work doesn't depend on perfect timing. It depends on whether you're willing to start, even when it feels uncertain. And I'm uncertain as to what direction this podcast will take because, I'm giving myself space to be okay with uncertainty because for the longest time, I tried to control my life, the direction of my life. And like, to me, I think the biggest example of that is following the traditional script in terms of my career. So I went to a good university. I have two master's degree right now. I did some prestigious jobs in tech and some other achievements, but everything, all of those things, it left me empty. So for me, this experiment, this podcast, the self-designed path, means choosing curiosity, freedom, and autonomy instead of chasing someone else's definition of success. So my goal with this experiment as well is to finally carve, discover, or maybe unearth what success really means to me. So it means carving my own road, even when I don't know exactly where it leads. And this podcast, it's step one on that path. Okay, so I talked about neuroscience earlier. So here's where the neuroscience comes in. So when we do something new, our brain literally rewires itself, and that is called neuroplasticity. And novelty, or doing something you've never done before, it sparks dopamine. That dopamine doesn't just make you feel good, it helps your brain learn and change faster as well. So by recording this episode, I'm not just sharing my story or my goals. I'm training my brain to embrace change, and that is the experiment. So to make reinvention feel natural instead of terrifying. And you can do the same. You don't have to start a podcast, but you can do something new. Something new and small that teaches your brain that change is safe. So for me, a mini example of novelty that I try to introduce to my routine is that I've been running 4 or 5 times a week the last 2 months, and I always make it a point to try a new running route just to train my brain that change is safe, that it's okay. And I also try some new tools when it comes to journaling, when it comes to like processing the stuff that I'm going through right now. And the thing with novelty, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be big. It could be as small as like trying a new pen or like trying a new dish, just to like build that concept of, changing things. And change is really like one of the things that is constant in this world. So you really have to get used to change in your life, because if you don't, you'll have a hard time like dealing with it. So here's today's experiment for you. So pick one small thing you've been curious about and take a step today. So if you're interested about journaling, maybe journal one sentence. And if you would like to improve your public speaking skills, maybe try to record a 30-second voice note talking about a topic that you're really interested about, or trying a new walking route without your headphones. So don't wait for clarity first, because action creates clarity. And when fear or anxiety shows up, remember that emotions are signals and they are not directives. If you look closely under the fear, you might find excitement, passion, commitment waiting to be discovered. So if you try this, message me or share it with me. I'd love to hear how it felt for you. So thank you for joining me on this very first step of the self-design path. This is an experiment for me, for you, for anyone who wants to carve a meaningful life outside the scripts we've been handed. If this episode resonated, share it with someone who might need that reminder. Clarity comes after starting, not before. In the next episode, I'll talk about one of the hardest days of feeling stuck and what neuroscience says about overthinking and why it keeps us trapped. Until then, take one small step and your brain will thank you. See you on the next one. Bye.